What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. In this video, we're going to preview the 2020 roster for the Alabama Crimson Tide here on NCAA football. It's what we're calling NCAA football 21 because that's what the game would be called if there was a college football game, as we continue to keep the NCAA football 14 game alive with these updates. And if you want to get this roster, you got to join us on Patreon. Join us on Patreon, and you can get all of our roster updates along with some other things as well. There's a link in the description of every video to our Patreon page. You just click that, go sign up, help support the channel, help us get these rosters done quicker by joining us on Patreon. Before we get into the roster preview, just wanted to quickly tell you how all of you can help out with these rosters and help us to make them as accurate as possible. If there are number changes for players, if there are incorrect years that you see on this roster, please let us know. Some of these rosters we started doing back before even the spring rosters had been released, so some of the freshmen didn't have numbers yet, and we're just going to go back and do those later. Or maybe some players changed their numbers. Maybe a guy got redshirted last year and we missed that, and we've got him as a senior and actually they're a redshirt junior or something along those lines. So if you see any of that, you can help us out there. Also, players that are no longer on the roster, maybe players that transferred that we had not taken off yet, you can remind us of those players, which of course I'm always checking the transfer portal. I'll come back and get that anyways, but it would just help out if something is put out there for us to make sure we don't miss it. A player that maybe has transferred, or a player that is not really expected to play much, not really on the too deep. If they're an upperclassman, we'll probably take those guys off the rosters and just tell us who you think they should be replaced with. Who do you think should be on this roster that is not? If it's a young player, a freshman, maybe they don't play, but they're still going to stay on the roster because you got to have those young players. The ratings are pretty much set, though. We have a specific formula that we use that's based off of a bunch of different numbers, stats. We use NFL Draft Scout for 40 times. If a player's not on there, we use their recruiting rating. A lot of different things. I'm not going to get into all of that, but those are pretty much set. You can make suggestions if you think a guy should go up or down if you'd like, but they're probably not going to change, at least until the depth charts come out, because at that point we will make some adjustments. We're not going to have a backup running back rated higher than a starting running back. Obviously that would make no sense, so there could be a little bit of adjustments there. Also, when the all-conference, all-American teams are announced, we may tweak some players in those cases as well, but for the most part it's all based off of this formula. Heights and weights, don't worry about that. We will come back and we will get all of those when the fall rosters are released, because those numbers can change anyways. There's no point in trying to update that and then it changes again. So we'll knock that out once the fall rosters come out. But if you have any help here, if you guys follow your team closer than anyone. If this is your team, you probably know a little bit more about them than I do, and maybe you know some things that I just have missed or whatever. You can help us make these rosters as accurate as possible by giving us this information. I'll be constantly coming back and checking these comments. When I see something that jumps out, I'll make a note, and when I get back on that team, I will make the adjustments. And you will, again, have a chance to get these rosters, even if you don't join us on Patreon. Of course, if you join us on Patreon, you can get these rosters right now. You can get all the updates, and I really would encourage you to do that just to help us to kind of speed up this process with a little bit of funding. But if you can't, that's fine. We will probably, more than likely, we're going to release these rosters once they're complete. So it may be August or whatever, but we will give them out for free at some point. And also, you can just help us to make sure our simulations are as accurate as possible as we begin to ramp those up as well. But if you have any information here, please feel free to comment down below and give us any updates that we need to make. Here are the top players for Alabama. You see Dylan Moses, their highest rated player. And you might say, how is he rated a 96? Didn't even play last year. Well, we went back to his 2018 stats to come up with his rating. Now, the injury, of course, could have some effect, but I don't think you can look at it like that. I think you have to go back to when the players were at full strength. So that's what we do with the guys that were out last year that did have playing time in previous years. So Dylan Moses, the top player on this Alabama team. Alex Leatherwood, a 95 overall. Najee Harris, 94. Devontae Smith, 93. Landon Dickerson, a 93. Patrick Surtain, a 93 as well. You see this team was loaded once again. Christian Harris, a 91 overall. Jalen Waddle, a 90. Evan Neal, an 89. And Deontay Brown, an 88. What stands out to me when I look at these ratings is their offensive line. Out of these top players, you've got 4 of the offensive linemen, 4 of the starters on the offensive line, all among the top players on this Alabama team. You got Najee Harris back at running back. Great offensive line. This team, I think, is going to be able to run the football this year. All right, let's go position by position. Mac Jones is an 87 overall, based off his numbers from last year. And I think he had enough playing time that we could actually use his stats. There are some players that you're not going to use their stats to come up with their rating because they didn't play enough. But he did have significant playing time. I can't remember, 3 or 4 games, or maybe 5 games that he actually started last season. So I think you can use his numbers, and his numbers are pretty solid. He's an 87 overall, one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC according to our rating scale. There's Bryce Young, an 82 overall, and players with no stats, incoming freshmen, their rating is based off of their recruiting rating from 24/7 Sports. So that's why you see him as an 82. He's a 5-star right there at the top of really all the players in the country coming in. And to his little brother, he's a 75 overall. So let's go now to the running backs. Najee Harris, again, 94. Don't really have a big-time number 2 guy. Trey Sanders is an 82 based off of his freshman recruiting rating as well. Hasn't seen the field yet, but he's actually the 2nd highest-rated player on this roster, or on this in the running backs, tied with Brian Robinson Jr., who's also an 82. Rodell Williams is an 80, and then you got Keelan Robinson, a 79. If Najee Harris goes down, I think this Alabama team might be in trouble. I think they'll still be able to run the football, but it'll make a difference. You look at their running backs, Devontae Smith, a 93. Excuse me, look at their wide receivers, I should say. Jalen Waddle, a 90. And you take a look, if you want to get into specific ratings, look at his acceleration, 99. So while the speed's only 93, and that again is based off of his NFL Draft Scout numbers, only a 93 speed, his acceleration is a 99, and I think that is going to make him very, very fast, not only as a receiver, but also in the return game as well. You got Tyrell Shavers, an 80 overall, Jones Bell, an 80. So some young guys going to have to step up for Alabama at wide receiver. Xavier Williams, a 79. Holden, 77. Mechie, a 74. And then Slade Bolden, a 71 overall, who I believe is their Wildcat quarterback. But I wish you could like have a Wildcat position here on the game. It always just goes with your running back. But there's Miller Forrestall, an 84. Cameron Latou, a 77. I think he might have transferred. Again, you guys can help me out with that, or I'll see it in the transfer portal when I make adjustments. But it seems like there was someone that they recently had transfer, or at least enter the transfer portal. I'm thinking it was him. Major Tennyson, a 73, and Jaleel Billingsley, a 71. A guy that I think has some upside that may actually be a pretty big threat for Alabama this year. We'll see how that plays out, but we just don't have anything right now to base that off of for his rating. There's again Alex Leatherwood, a 95 overall. Javion Cohen, a 72. At left guard, you've got again Landon Dickerson, 93. Ikior Jr., a 77. There's Chris Owens, an 84. The only offensive lineman starter that was not on that first page. Darian Dalcourt, a 75, and Seth McLaughlin, a 74. Deontay Brown, 88, and then at right tackle, you've got Evan Neal, an 89. Also Tommy Brown, a 77, and Danion George, a 72. And I know I'm going to butcher a lot of these names, but it is what it is. LeBron Ray, 88 overall, pretty strong on the defensive line. This team will be, I think, Byron Young, an 80, and 79 overall there. Christian Barmore, an 87. Their defensive ends are going to be pretty good this year. There is Mathis, an 81. And, I mean, when we talk about Alabama, of course, they're going to be really good everywhere because they always are. DJ Dell, an 84. Timothy Smith, an 80. Sofsfer, an 80. And Stephon Wynn Jr., an 80. So you got 3 guys, 80 overall. DJ Dell, I think, is going to be their top interior defensive lineman this season. We'll see. Will Anderson, a left outside linebacker, an 83. There is Christopher Allen, a 78. And Kevin Harris, 77. Dylan Moses, 96. Christian Harris, a 91. And, of course, with the NCAA football rosters, when you have a 3-4 defense, your top 2 middle linebackers will be starters. So you see Christian Harris, number 2 there on the list. He will actually be a starter on the game. Shane Lee, an 88. This team is loaded at linebacker. Kennedy, an 81. Benton, an 80. Cahill, an 80. And Moody, a 72. Right side, you got Chris Braswell, an 83. Ben Davis, 82. Drew Sanders, 81. And a 76 there. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. Cornerbacks, Patrick Surtain, a 93. Josh Jobe, is 86. There's a little bit of a drop-off after that. You've got Jalen Armour-Davis, a 78. Scooby Carter, who is probably going to have to be taken off here. He's been in and out of the transfer portal about 100 times. I think he got arrested. Again, I'm going to come back and tweak some things, but when I originally did Alabama, he had come out of the transfer portal, but again, I think he's back in there, and he had some legal problems as well. So I don't expect Scooby Carter to be on the final roster for Alabama. We'll see. Marcus Banks, a 77, and Robinson, a 73. So again, you've got Surtain, you got Joe, 2 pretty good corners, but there is a little bit of a depth issue, I think. But some of these guys may be better than these ratings actually show. Free safety, Jordan Battle, an 85. You got Daniel Wright, a 76, Moore, a 74. So again, you see the depth not super strong here in the secondary, and you got to say, well, these guys haven't played much. Your rating is based off of stats, so of course they're not going to have that high of a rating, but that does kind of tie into their recruiting rating, and I just sometimes can tell you how much overall talent some of these players have. So we'll see if that pans out in real life, but at least for the video game, those are going to be the ratings. And you got DeMarco Helms, an 81. Brian Branch, an 80. And I think most people coming into this season actually would say that is the weakness of this team, is probably the secondary with all they lost. Will Richard, the kicker, an 82. And then you got Skylar DeLong, an 80 overall punter. And that's it. That's the roster for Alabama. So again, this team looks very strong at linebacker. Defensive line looks pretty strong. Depth maybe a little bit of an issue there in the secondary. On the offensive side of the ball, there are weapons all around. The offensive line is going to be one of the top offensive lines in the country. If Mac Jones can play pretty well, again, this Alabama team is going to be one of the top teams once again. They're going to be a playoff contender. They're going to be one of the top playoff contenders and one of the top contenders to win the SEC championship this upcoming season. So that's the roster, though. If you want to get these rosters, again, you've got to join us on Patreon. It's just $5 a month. I mean, you spend that much just going to McDonald's. It's not much money. You're going to get all these roster updates. You're also going to help support us and help us to get these rosters done faster, which is really the most important thing. If you could help us out for a month or two, get these things rolling. Then if you don't want to stay on Patreon, you can drop off. That's fine. But if you could join, it would really help us to speed up this process. But if you can't, again, we will be releasing a roster for everyone for free probably in August, at least with the Power 5 team. So again, give me your thoughts on this Alabama roster, any updates that you have down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports YouTube channel.